Live. Everywhere. On netrootsradio.com. David Waldman. Kagro. In the mornings. Now, here's David Waldman.
Hey, good morning, everybody. How you doing? It's Friday. We made it all the way to Friday. Like I said, it used to be a relief back in the old days when you made it to Friday. Now, of course, it's you stand at the precipice of, some sort of weird doom thing happening over the weekend. Donald Trump saying something so outrageous that you just can't take it anymore, or something like that. And with this being a long weekend, a long holiday weekend, Memorial Day kind of snuck up on me, and it's Monday. And, Greg and I would probably like to take an extra day just to regroup. But I'm a little bit worried that he'll say something so outrageous that it demands our presence somehow on Monday. But we can't continue living our lives for that guy. We're not supposed to be doing that anyway. Thank you for your attention to this matter. And Trump is out and tweeting out his instructions this morning, along with his what's now become his signature tagline. Thank you for your attention to this matter. It's quite irritating. And I think, today, let's see, it's, he's going to be reimposing tariffs, but under a new sort of tariff regime. Companies, specifically, that he doesn't like will now get their own tariffs. It's still supposedly based on the idea that tariffs could be used to impact industrial policy, right? You have to build it here in the United States, or else, there's going to be a tariff. All right, well, that's not really going to, in most cases, bring manufacturing back to the United States. But I guess we understand that. All right, so the policy is if you are importing goods or you're importing components of your goods, whatever it is, even if you plan to make the final product here in the United States, you got to pay the tariff on the import of those goods. All right, and now he spent the whole time saying, no, the other countries where they build these things, they're going to be the ones paying the tariffs. They're going to make us so rich. And, of course, that's not the way they work. But so if you are Apple and you make all your products outside of the United States, import them, sell them here, I guess you come to understand that and you say, all right, prices are going to rise. That's just kind of the way it is. I don't know what it is that has angered Trump about Apple specifically this morning. Maybe they haven't given him enough money. He didn't buy enough of his crypto coin or something like that. I'm not certain what's motivating it. But he now says, really, all Apple, the iPhones should all be made in the United States. And if they're made elsewhere, there's going to be an extra 25% tariff on Apple products. Which, if they're paying the tariff for what they're importing, why would Apple get more than anybody else? Don't look for it to make sense. I am sort of interested, though, in trying to find out what might have made him angry about Apple. I'm not certain. Did someone air something on television last night about Apple, or about apples, the fruit, possibly? That may be it. Maybe he saw an old Fruit of the Loom ad, and I really hate that guy in the Apple suit. I'm not certain what would motivate that, but who knows? Maybe he got a wedgie yesterday, and that's the end of it. Thank you for your attention to this matter. All right, last night was the Big Crypto Dinner, which was kind of funny, as it turns out. It was in my neighborhood. Who are the people in my neighborhood? Well, these people I don't meet each day, and that's good news. He had it at the Trump, the Washington, what they call the Washington Golf Club, or what he calls Trump National. But they pretend it's in Washington. It's not. It's out of my house. And if it was Washington, I'd know it. It's right here. Thankfully, I will say this. They've done a remarkable job not disrupting traffic or life in general in my area every time he drags his stupid ass out here. So I'm kind of glad of that. That's nice. Anyway, yesterday was the Big Crypto Dinner at the place, and lots of stupid controversy swirling about that one. Of course, the whole premise was we're going to have a big dinner, intimate dinner, as he said, and you get to talk to the president for the 220, I'm still not sure why that number, 220 top investors in the Trump meme coin. The more money you give me, the more likely you are, whoever you are, to get into the Big Crypto Dinner and have, an intimate time with me, which is, ask Stormy Daniels about that. Do you really want to pay for that? You should be paying you. She got money out of it. Why aren't you? You're paying for this? Anyway, it was held nearby. There was a nice size protest outside, even though it was kind of a rainy day here, and I forgot all about the fact that they were having this dinner. It's close enough that, yeah, that's a protest. If I find out at the last minute, maybe I'll drive over there and join it. But of course, it's never, it's not all that convenient necessarily, because you got to park a million miles away probably and walk over there. But it's a nice little neighborhood. Lots of other people did the job and showed up and protested and booed at the people going to park in the parking lot and join in the intimate dinner. Anyway, as it turns out, the reports are that I guess people are a little bit pissed, because a lot of people poured like several $1 million into this, not all of whom had several $1 million to spare, but some of them were in it for a get-rich-quick scheme, and then they thought, also, I'll get a picture with Trump at the golf club, and we'll do thumbs up. Others are wealthier people to begin with and are just using it to supplement their other crooked incomes, like what's his name, Justin's son. Anyway, apparently, mixed crowd yesterday. They showed up, and the word is that he basically helicoptered in. And when they helicopter in, they have to I understand they helicopter him to like Leesburg. You can look on the map and see what's going on. To the Leesburg Executive Airport and land their helicopter there, and then drive from Leesburg Executive Airport. It's so executive. Thank you for your attention. To Sterling, Virginia, to go to the golf club, and it's it's a 20-minute. Well, I guess if you're in limousines and with a police escort, it's a 15-minute ride, less. I haven't timed it, speeding down the highway, but it's a very convenient for him. And so they helicoptered in, helicoptered out, for one thing, and he spent 15 minutes there. The intimate dinner was, they're all eating their dinner, which who knows what kind of rubber chicken crap they were getting. In he comes, probably late, and he talks to him for 15 minutes, not sitting at the table. Hi, how are you? What's the problem? What attention would you like paid to what matter? He gave a speech to these crypto investors about crypto, but I think they were also expecting to hear a new exciting crypto policy being launched. But he didn't. He basically came in and said, what's great? You can make a lot of money with crypto, and that's what we're doing. Thank you for your money. And he left, and they were like, we didn't get photos. We didn't sit down with him, nothing like that. Some people were nonetheless satisfied anyway. Others less so. I think they maybe thought that there was going to be some policy announcement, although when they started getting pressure about the nature of the event, which is give me as much money as you can, and then whoever gives me the most gets to come to dinner, that's hugely corrupt. The White House answering questions about that yesterday, saying, no, this is a private thing. This is on his private time. It's not like time that presidents get. Turn off everything, and there's no more right to understanding what the president is doing at this point in time, because it's a private thing, and he's stealing a lot of money. But apparently that was the excuse. This is a private thing, so we don't have to give you the guest list. Although I think the guest list is probably discernible by looking at the wallets that hold Trump meme coin and figuring out who showed up, except that a lot of those wallets are anonymous. And by the way, that's another story. I didn't put this one aside necessarily, but there's probably some mention of it, and I could probably find it pretty quickly if I leave a note for myself, or even if we try and search it out now. Let me open up a search page. But I've seen a lot of people on Blue Sky posting stories that something like, well, all right, so the top 220 investors get to go to the dinner. 50 of them, they tried to discern the guest list by looking at the wallets, but again, like, they are anonymous. But that also raises a different opportunity. What do you name your wallet? Normally, not something that's going to be of interest for normal people, right? If you had crypto and you had a crypto wallet, what would you call your wallet? David's wallet? Kagro's wallet? My filthy crypto lucre? Possibly. There's an opportunity to hang yourself online with a crypto wallet just like anything else. Some 50 of the 220 crypto wallets were like, I love Nazis, F the Jews, and one of them was just plain, just the N-word and nothing else. Like, that's the name of your crypto wallet? You have to be a special kind of person to do that. What does that mean? I don't even know how you feel about crypto based on that. But So apparently some 50, about a quarter of the people who paid enough to Trump to be in attendance at this thing, when they started their crypto wallets and named their crypto wallet, they named it something offensive, neo-Nazi, or white supremacist. Wow. That is some crowd. So, that by itself, a little bit weird. And then, of course, he ends up essentially shortchanging them by showing up for 15 minutes. The NBC News write-up of it, kind of boring. Trump's crypto dinner, tuxedos, luxury cars. I love luxury. Thank you for your attention to this matter. And a former NBA star who also showed up. By the way, thank you for your attention to this matter is the new, brought to you by Carl's Jr., I think. We just put it on the end of everything. As people began arriving for the event, the price of Trump coin, and remember it's $ Trump, which I just read as Strump, which is, I guess, appropriate, dropped suddenly by about 6%, indicating a significant sales volume before stabilizing. I guess so. I'm not certain what that's supposed to mean, but I guess it was maybe some kind of a rug pull, like when we finally gotten all the money that we can get out of the scam of pay as much as you can and then you can get into the dinner, and we've finalized the guest list, dump some of it, and take the money. Let's see. President Donald Trump held a private event. They love saying that. Oh, by the way, it was also reported people, tweeting out from inside the room. I guess they don't know that this is wrong, or... Yeah, it's not like it's going to make real problems for Donald Trump. He's doing things 10,000 times more illegal every minute. But I don't have to give out the guest list. It's a private event. Yada, yada, yada. They made sure to have a presidential seal on the lectern, I guess, that he spoke from to give it that official feel that it wasn't supposed to have. So he loves, blurring those lines, I guess, would be the sane washing way of discussing it, but it's in fact, pushing the limits on everything. I don't have to tell you anything because it's private. It has nothing to do with public policy, but please put that seal on there to make me look important. So, all right. So I just didn't read the rest of it. Thursday night, there were 220 crypto investors who had bought into his meme coin, defying bipartisan concerns from lawmakers that he was selling access to accumulate personal wealth. Well, the joke's on you. I didn't give anybody access. I just accumulated the personal wealth. I don't know how to feel about that. Crypto enthusiasts, including the one basketball guy, former NBA star Lamar Odom. Okay, I don't follow, but that sounds familiar. Who knows? Anyway, they all went to dinner at the Trump National Golf Club in Northern Virginia, just outside Washington. It's not in Washington. About 100 demonstrators lined the road to the entrance, trying to shame attendees with chants and signs such as "Trump is a traitor," "Crypto corruption," and "America is not for sale." And had I gone, I guess I could have brought my personal favorite, "Trump is a hot diarrhea pants." That's still the best sign I've seen so far. I'm not even sure what it means. Thank you for your attention to this fecal matter. Anyway, so they showed up, 100 demonstrators. I just want to point out once again to those who are listening, you know this already. This is in Loudoun County, which, if you're new to the show, you might remember Loudoun County having been probably they told you in the news some time ago, oh, this is the reactionary county full of rich MAGA weirdos who want to end woke and ban masks and something, and there was an attack in the bathroom, and it's trans students, and we're going to listen to parents. It was the focal point of Glenn Youngkin's campaign for governor, which he ridiculously won. And everybody sort of in the rest of the country following the race sort of heard of, oh my gosh, look at what's going on in Loudoun County. And the parents are screaming and being arrested at the town hall meetings and the PTA meetings. And what a bunch of, and then the government is coming down on them, and it's just not fair. Anyway, I kept reminding you, Loudoun County actually trends pretty regularly blue these days, and that the part of Loudoun County where all of the activity was going on, including the attack, but the protest against it, are solidly blue, and they didn't vote for Youngkin at all. He was walloped by double digits in that area. So I don't know. So it should surprise no one, even though demographically it's a wealthy area. Although really the bulk of the money is, I think, to the west of us in Loudoun County. It's horse country out there. That's what accounts for some of it. So on average, it's a very wealthy county, or it has been. Maybe things are changing now, but because out in the west, they were just sitting on piles of money. Well, I guess sitting on horses on top of piles of money, in English saddles, no less. And out toward the east, where it's, closer packed housing, some of it, still very pricey and very nice and all. But those guys, that part of the county, very largely federal employees or contractors and lobbyist types, and, connected to government work, but a lot of PhDs and senior government employees and people who used to be senior government employees who've traded it in for working for, defense contractors or what have you. So anyway, maybe a lot of them are out of work now. Who knows? Anyway, they can produce a 100-person demonstration pretty quickly when Trump comes to town. I was at the one outside the golf club in November of 2000. What the hell year was it? 2020. When the day they finally announced, okay, Trump actually lost. And it was fun to hang out there and say, hooray. We just gather at a nearby Trump spot and say, thank God it's all over. But it wasn't. Anyway, so in he goes to the black tie optional event. Let's see. The average participant spent about $1.8 million accumulating Trump coin in order to get in there. By the way, just in case you were wondering how this whole thing works, 2 Trump-affiliated companies own 80% of the Trump coin project, while their ability to sell the coin to, do a quick rug pull is restricted in the short term, and that's good news. The project's creators get a fee for every trade. So when they set off a frenzy like that, if you're one of the top 220 buyers, you get into this dinner, there's a buying frenzy, and they take a fee on every one of those purchases. The fees have added up to more than $324 million since January, according to research firm Chain Analysis. The precise amount going to Trump personally is not known, but as we said, it's more than $324 million in fees. My guess is about $323 million go to Trump personally, but we're not really sure. But again, hundreds of millions of dollars in his pocket for nothing. You don't get a coin. You can't buy anything with it. And in fact, I think one of the disclaimers I guess they think will keep them out of trouble with something like the SEC. Well, what will keep him out of trouble with the SEC is he's the president and he can fire the SEC. But what's supposed to keep them out of that realm of trouble, I guess, is they're right up front when they sell you the coin. They're like, you can't use this thing. It doesn't have any intrinsic value. It's not supposed to be a currency. It's purely a souvenir. Buying this is meant to demonstrate, interest in Donald Trump. And that's all. And then, so if you lose your shirt, there's a rug pull, what have you. I guess, why do you lose your shirt in the rug pull? You lose the rug. Anyway, that's the basics of it. When you lose all your money, they say, that's what happens in a thing where there's no intrinsic value, and we tell you that right up front. So, okay. Look at this. The menu for the night included a Trump organic field green salad. That's the sort of thing you wouldn't guess would be there. I guess McDonald's is what you would think, but it's supposed to be fancy. Filet mignon, that is probably the most predictable Trump cut of steak there possibly could be. Like, there's better, I think, tasting, but that's, I guess, in the 1980s mindset where he's stuck. Like, what's the fanciest steak? Filet mignon. All right. And since then, I don't know. I think cows are mostly the same, but it seems to me like the cuts of steak are different, or they're preparing steak in different and more exciting ways these days. That filet mignon, not my first choice necessarily. Pan-seared halibut and lava cake. Look out, the floor is lava. I don't need it in the cake. The photo posted by one attendee who goes by Crypto with an extra O, like Crypto_bear. That the Secret Service must have been going nuts with this whole thing. We don't know who any of these people are. 50 of them are avowed Nazis. How do we vet that? It doesn't matter. You're not allowed to. I'll kill you if you do it. So anyway, Crypto-Bear showed attendees receiving a commemorative hat and card. That's what you get. It's interesting. So the same graphic is on the hat and the card. The hat isn't a red MAGA hat. It's a black hat, but simple, basic one with the front panel is foam and the others is that mesh. And what the graphic on the hat is a reproduction of the card that you get. And the card is sort of like trading card style thing. And it's the Trump, the picture after he got shot and the fight thing. So that's what you get, plus the menu and whatever. I think we can be done with this now, but I think I'm kind of happy that there are people disappointed and they put almost $2 million on average into this thing and they got nothing out of it in terms of talking to the president. So that's pretty good. Also, I guess of note, I think it says here in this article way down at the bottom that among the 100 or so protesters this is a really long article, longer than I thought. You can read it over the weekend. We don't need any more details. But Jeff Merkley, Senator Merkley from Oregon, showed up at the protest, chatting people up about, for one thing, his End Crypto Corruption Act, which is well titled, and it was quite amazing. Anyway, so his quote of the day, just to throw that out there, because we appreciate his showing up. The spirit of the Constitution was that no one elected would be selling influence to anyone because it's to be government by and for the people, your constituents, not government by and for the people who hand money across the table to you, Merkley said. Well, they do it all under the table now, so it's okay. All right. So I was pleased to know that they didn't get that much contact with him out of the dinner, because the last person to talk to him often sets federal policy going forward, and 50 out of the 200 of them were avowed Nazis. So you don't want that if you can avoid it. All right. Let's see. That occupied too much time in our opening segment, but it's the opening segment is a little bit of a warm-up thing there. All right, let's see a couple other things that we probably could shoehorn in before we break, and then we'll get serious after the break. HuffPost. I'm turning to HuffPost for the serious part of Jennifer Bendry, she's pretty serious, has this piece of interest, things that you didn't know, probably, things that you didn't know. You didn't know about this. She didn't use that construction in her headline. That are stuffed into the one big beautiful bill that the House dispensed with the other day. Gun silencers. Did you know they were in there? I've heard tell of that. Tanning beds got some sort of consideration somehow. And other weird stuff tucked into the GOPS tax bill. Let's just read it, and as fast as we can before the break. There are certain elected officials who appear to have a certain orange hue about them. One Democrat scoffed at a tanning provision later stripped from the bill. Thankfully, it was stripped from the bill. You don't want to see the members who supported it stripping. You want that provision out instead. When House Republicans passed Donald Trump's sweeping domestic policy package, and not much policy going on in there, in the wee hours of Thursday, and nothing Donald Trump loves more than we, on Thursday, they didn't just approve giving trillions of dollars in tax cuts to rich people while kicking down millions of poor people. No, there's more than that. They made it easier to get gun silencers in case you have to shoot the people who have come to try to find the cake that you said you were going to let them eat, I would guess. And quietly, it removed a weird provision about tanning beds. We are governed by weirdos, I must say. It expanded a ban on gender-affirming care. That's actually probably to be expected these days, sadly. And in a show of fealty to the president, they came up with a new name for tax savings accounts that the government would seed with $1,000 for babies born in the next few years. What kind of creative name would you give that? Remember, we're going to give you $1,000, or you're allowed to, I guess, set aside $1,000 tax-free. Is that probably how it's structured? They're not giving you money. They're telling you they're giving you money. What are they going to call this baby fund? Oh, well, actually, they're called Trump accounts. Oh, that has nothing to do with babies, except that he's a big baby. There was already going to be a lot going on in the GOP's 1,100-page bill. Remember when they were supposed to be 3 pages or 9 pages or whatever, which is actually called, it really did, they called it, I told you this the other day, the One Big Beautiful Bill Act, which makes no sense. But things got confusing. Oh, really? Late Wednesday, when Republicans unveiled a 42-page amendment with all kinds of 11th-hour changes. They released their new language as the House Rules Committee was entering its 20th hour of a hearing on the bill, and Democrats barely had time to make sense of all the changes. And you can't make sense of those changes. Not that you should stop trying, but you're not going to get anywhere. But again, just to be clear about how they did it, all of this stuff wasn't in the bill until it gets to the Rules Committee, which really shouldn't be normally dealing with substantive additions and subtractions. They can approve amendments for the floor consideration, but they're not supposed to be adding things into the chart. But they do that routinely now. But not only did they do that when the Rules Committee is the last stop before the floor, but the Rules Committee started their hearing at 1 a.m, and it wasn't until they were 20 hours in that they even bothered to pull out the text of this amendment, and the amendment is 42 pages long. No chance in the world for people to know what's going on in this bill.
Hi, I'm Scott Anderson, the guy that writes the daily summary for this show, Kagro in the Morning. Thank you to everyone that supports this show. Many of you send donations through PayPal, Patreon, Square Cash, Radio Public, and so on. Some of you write your own essays and send them in, or read articles with your own commentary. We appreciate it. Now, some of you are listening to this and thinking, I'd like to help, but isn't there something I could do that wouldn't require money or effort? Why, yes, there is. You can just like us. On Daily Kos, they call it the recommend button. YouTube has a thumbs up. There are hearts and likes and love buttons. Tap our love button. Tap our love button every day. Share our shows and summaries on Facebook and Twitter, YouTube and iTunes, Stitcher and Amazon. Most of these places allow you to write a review, so a sentence or two would be great. Recommend us to social media, or tell your friends to listen to the show. You aren't just helping us, you're helping them find their new favorite thing to listen to. You could change the world. So thank you in advance from me and everybody else in the world.
All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. Let's continue, if you wouldn't mind, with our reading of Jen Bendry's piece in HuffPost about weird stuff tucked into the One Big Beautiful Bill and done at the last minute, which is exactly when you would want to do something this weird. I mean, there's good reason for it. It's just not nice. But, and of course, Republicans, when they were in the minority, used to, constantly be gnashing their teeth and rending their garments, even, over the idea that they wouldn't have 72 hours to read every page of the bill before it came to the floor, and they were going to, when we're in charge, we're going to do yada, yada. Well, obviously, we told you right away they weren't going to do it. And it's not only because Republicans are huge liars and hypocrites. True. And as good a basis to conclude this as any. But I guess in as close to fairness as we could muster, we'll tell you that stuff falls by the wayside a lot, no matter who's in charge, because the reality is, you're trying to meet deadlines and trying to get things done. This is a really egregious example of it. But remember, they used to, like we said, they were, as the colloquialism goes, is it colloquial to say they're pissing and moaning about this stuff? Anyway, they used to cry about that. Oh, it's got to be 72 hours before it comes to the floor that we get to read it. All right, well, we're going to give you, 40 hours or 28 hours. We're cutting it close. no, 72 is the minimum necessary, and anything you don't do, regular order, blah, blah, blah. This is not only happening late in a late starting Rules Committee hearing, like why not bring these things up in the Ways and Means Committee or the Commerce Committee or where they belong? First of all, so doing it in Rules Committee is already a problem. Doing it at a committee meeting that starts at 1 in the morning is a bigger problem. Doing it in the 20th hour of the 1 a.m. hearing, even worse. And then, of course, the substance of the things. Like, for instance, let's jump down to the descriptions. We mentioned gun silencers. What's up with this? Making it easier to get gun silencers. Shh, they're silent. They're not, but, you know. Anyway, in order to win over the vote of Representative Andrew Clyde of Georgia, that's what it took. A member of the far-right House Freedom Caucus, GOP leaders slipped language into the bill, making it easier for people to buy gun silencers. And remember, this is supposed to, like, balance the budget, and it doesn't. Or bring tax policy in line with things that you need to be protected from filibusters. I don't even think you need a filibuster protection to get a gun silencer thing by, but okay. Specifically, the bill eliminates a $200 firearm registration fee for silencers and removes a requirement that people have to register their silencers at all. So if you get a cool tactical assassination equipment package for your AR-15, not only do you not have to pay anything, but to register the thing, you don't have to register at all. So just basically, it could be a secret thing. And hey, the guy reminded everybody at the Big Crypto Dinner last night, I got shot by a guy who thought he was a totally cool, tactical assassin. And now everybody can outfit themselves this way, and it will cause me no problems as I steal money from all of you. All right. And then, of course, the big parade coming up on June 14th. Both his birthday and Flag Day, and Flag Day because apparently it's they personify this thing, a birthday of the United States Army. So, yay, happy birthday, Army. And they're going to have a big military parade in his honor. And as I keep pondering, you know, he's firing generals and turning military policy upside down, and pissing off, I assume, the last serious remaining agents in the Secret Service as well. A big parade has got to have, you know, Anwar Sadat laughing in the afterlife, but also everybody go get some free silencers. During the late-night Rules Committee hearing, Representative Mary Gay Scanlon of Pennsylvania, a Democrat, howled about this magical amendment suddenly being part of the bill. She noted that the federal tax on gun silencers had been in place since 1934. So both the tax and silencers been around quite a long time, and part of the American fabric at this point. But you can see how crippling the tax has been in all this time. America's economic potential has never been fully unlocked until now, with the end of the so-called tax on gun silencers. Now we'll finally become an economic power. It's a brazen attempt to make it easier to commit violent crimes, said Scanlon. And who needs, like, by the way, right, it's a good point, too. Silencers, well, I need it for home defense. I don't want to wake up my neighbors when I kill people in my house. It's an emergency. You can wake them up. It's all right. Anyway, a brazen attempt to make it easier to commit violent crimes or pretend you're John Wick or whatever, said Scanlon as she unsuccessfully tried to strip it from the bill. I think it's sneaky. I think it's a radical policy change with no explanation for why this longstanding federal policy should be overturned in the middle of the night. True. Representative Jim McGovern of Massachusetts, the top dam on the rules panel, ripped Republicans for slipping the unrelated gun provision into their tax bill. Quite frankly, what is in this reconciliation bill, you know, does more to support assassins than it does American families, McGovern said. That's well put. When a Republican on the committee laughed him off, assassins, the Massachusetts Democrat fired back, silently, I guess. You know what? Talk to law enforcement. Talk to people who have been the victims of gun violence. I know you think it's funny, but I don't. And that's probably true. If you can get a cop who will tell you honestly, what do you think about everybody can get silencers now? I don't think of it as a good thing. Here's a question for you. Talk to all the Republican mayors and Democrats for that matter, who installed ShotSpotter at costs of X millions of dollars in their cities. The microphones essentially all over the streets that allegedly listen for the sound of gunfire so they can alert police to it, even before people call the cops and say, I just heard gunshots, and they can triangulate and figure out the location. In theory, you could see how it could be used as a good crime fighting tool. But yeah, that should be fun, right? We just spent $100 million on a contract for ShotSpotter, and now everybody's got silencers. Oh well, too bad. What else? Axing and then keeping a tax on tanning beds. Super important stuff. For some reason, Republicans initially included language in the bill to repeal a federal excise tax on indoor tanning services. And if I'm not mistaken, they've tried this like 6 times, and I can't figure out what their fascination with this stuff is. I mean, I guess they want to lower the price of anything that they might like to have in their house, but really. All right. It appears they were shamed, believe it or not, into taking this out at the last minute. I don't know if that's the right word for it, but Representative Teresa Leger-Fernandez, Leger, I don't know, L-E-G-E-R, Fernandez, Democrat of New Mexico, some new people for me to become familiar with, flagged the provision in Wednesday's Rules Committee hearing and asked Ways and Means Committee Chair Jason Smith, Republican of Missouri, another unknown to me, but chairman of the Ways and Means Committee, who was testifying before the committee, to read the line item out loud. And guess what? He refused. Read this out. Everyone should hear this stupid thing you put in here. I won't do it. So that the American public knows what this bill does, would you please read page 901, line 20? Leger Fernandez asked Smith. I think it'd be better if you read it. Smith replied, why is that? Don't make fun of him. He's dyslexic. I don't know, but he doesn't want to read it, Leger Fernandez said with a laugh. It's in their bill. They don't want to read a line from their own bill. All right. Well, maybe he has a learning disability. How dare you? Ms. Sorry. Well, why not? She probably wouldn't object to being referred to as Ms. Gwen Moore. It's Representative Gwen Moore to you, loser. Democrat of Wisconsin eventually did read the provision out loud. It says, Section 11106. Repeal of excise tax on indoor tanning services. And amid more laughs, Leger Fernandez contrasted the provision, which makes it easier to own a tanning bed, with the bill's drastic cuts to Medicaid and food assistance. Why make it easier to eat when you can make it even easier to get a tan in the middle of the winter, I guess, or in your own house? She took a shot at Trump's tanning habits, and I don't even know if that's what's going on, and wondered aloud if he put that language into the bill. I think he just puts makeup on. Do you think he does tanning bed stuff? Maybe. I don't know. Turn that up. Anyway, there are certain elected officials who appear to have a certain orange hue about them, she said. Maybe they want to make sure tanning beds get a little bit of special credit. John Boehner was definitely using tanning beds. And I think it was when he was in power that they first tried this nonsense about like lowering taxes on tanning beds. Although I would like to know where they came up with the idea of taxing tanning beds separately anyway in the first place. Next up, the tanning bed provision, by the way, was mysteriously gone in the final bill. So that is another interesting thing, right? They come to you with a 42-page amendment 20 hours into this late middle of the night thing, and it's got the tanning bed, and they say, read it. I don't want to read it. Isn't this stupid? You have this in there. It's not stupid. All right, well, let's see. All right, here comes the final bill up for a vote, and they look through it, and all of a sudden the tanning bed thing is gone. Why didn't you just say, yeah, you're right. This is kind of dumb. We don't need this. But no, instead, they stomp their feet and say, it stays, and then quietly remove it with a silencer. Next up, a provision to let Trump operate as a king. That sounds bad. Someone put language in the bill, and that's always perennially an issue. They put in something stupid like that. How did that get in there? And no one will claim responsibility for it, and there's no way of finding out necessarily, no easily publicly available way. I suppose you could analyze the electronic documents and see who edited it at that point in the document. Anyway, someone put language in the bill that attempts to let Trump circumvent the nation's courts and essentially serve as a king. I think I snuck this in at the very last minute of yesterday's show. No court of the United States may use appropriated funds to enforce a contempt citation for failure to comply with an injunction or temporary restraining order if no security was given when the injunction or order was issued. That doesn't immediately make sense to me, but I understand the goal of it, but the restriction at the end there, I'll have to find out more about that. Translated, this provision would strip all federal courts, including the Supreme Court, of the ability to hold Trump or members of his administration in contempt of court. And that's like the last line of defense so far. Nobody's using it, but I'd like to see him try. Not only does this provision raise constitutional concerns, but its timing is eerie, as Trump has been flouting an order by the Supreme Court to, quote, facilitate, as you know, the return of Kilmar Armando Abrego Garcia, though they threw the Armando in there for us. I appreciate that. A legal U.S. resident who was mistakenly, maybe, deported to El Salvador. The administration has also been ignoring orders from lower courts to stop deporting migrants without giving them due process as well. We need to catch up a little bit on who's the latest to be deported. The people that they're deporting to South Sudan lately, who are not from South Sudan, and who also likewise are being flown out of the country while there's a standing court order prohibiting it. And so far, just no answer from the administration as to what are you doing? There's a court order saying you can't do this. And they don't want to answer. Who cares, right? I don't know. What am I doing? You tell me what I'm doing. Well, I find you in contempt of court. No, you don't, because we repealed that yesterday. All right. There's a ban on, or expansion of a ban on gender-affirming care, not to include buying Bushmaster AR-15s, which reissue your man card. That's an okay kind of gender-affirming care. Rogaine, Viagra, all good gender-affirming care. It's the other stuff that we don't understand very well, it doesn't make sense to me, is got to be illegal. Get it? An eagle-eyed reporter first flagged a slight change in wording in the final bill that significantly expanded a ban on using Medicaid or CHIP funding for gender-affirming care. The GOP bill initially imposed this prohibition on minors, but its final language applies to everyone relying on these programs, no matter what your age is. We got to protect the kids. I guess kids are included in this, too, if you think you're protecting anybody. The House Republican budget bill passed this morning shows that anti-trans policies remain a top priority for both the party and the Trump administration, said Imara Jones, CEO of Translash Media, an independent news organization that tells the stories of transgender people. The fact that they are willing to ban federally funded health care for trans people of all ages, including adults on Medicaid and children enrolled in CHIP, shows that the goal all along has been to push trans people from public life, Jones said in a statement. Next up, creating Trump accounts for new babies. Really? The GOP bill creates a new incentive for women, and remember also that the people who mostly will be claiming this stuff are probably subjugated to their husbands anyway, and have no control over the finances. But they have to say that the incentive is for women because of the babies part. The GOP bill creates a new incentive for women to make more babies. How does that happen? Just whip up the ingredients in the kitchen? Make more babies. By paying them $1,000 for every American baby, born over the next 4 years, after which we don't care about babies anymore, I guess. For babies born between January 1st, 2025 and January 1st, 2029, so there's a retroactive component to this, the federal government would deposit $1,000, really, into an account called a Trump account, because Trump is the father of these babies, I guess. That money would then be invested on their behalf in financial markets. What kind of a program is this? Not here, you do what you want with it. Not here, you raise the child with it. Not here, you can take it and invest it on behalf of your kids. But the government will invest it. So congratulations, everybody's got $1,000 of Trump meme coin or $1,000 worth of shares in XAI. I don't know what. That money would be invested on their behalf in financial markets. By whom, I'm not sure. And when the baby grows up, if he or she can withdraw from their Trump account for things like going to college or buying a house. The kid's parents can also contribute to the account. Oh, that's nice. Sure. Wow. I don't know. That seems a little loosey-goosey to me. The GOP decided this money would be deposited into something called a money account for growth and advancement. Or, think it through, MAGA. The MAGA account, but that didn't seem to sufficiently suck up to Trump. So at the 11th hour, they renamed the accounts after him. Isn't that something? I wonder if they got a call about that. Why did you call them MAGA accounts? Well, 'cause that's your thing. That's your little slogan, right? That doesn't do anything for Trump. Put it in the Trump account. Say Trump. All right. He came to the Capitol Hill. He spoke to the Republicans. All of a sudden, I don't know that he said anything about that overtly at that meeting, but all of a sudden these are renamed. What else? Reversing course on selling public lands in Utah and Nevada. In a rare win for people who care about the environment, Republicans removed language from the final bill that would have allowed for the sale of public lands in Nevada and Utah. Representative Ryan Zinke, back in Congress, can't believe it. Republican of Montana, who served as Trump's Interior Secretary in his first term, now demoted, I guess, had threatened to vote against the bill unless this language was stripped. That is amazing. Why? Well, I wonder what he has up his sleeve here. Environmental groups praised Zinke for his efforts, even if the overall bill is terrible. The American people have spoken loud and clear. Our public lands should not be for sale. Athan Manuel, director of Sierra Club's Lands Protection Program, said in a statement. I bet Zinke had something else to say. Like, I am not getting any money out of this. We have to, when we figure it out so that I get paid, then we can sell the public lands. Members of Congress from both sides of the aisle were right to throw this proposal in the trash can, but a bad bill is still a bad bill, he said. As written, Donald Trump's reconciliation package is a giveaway to corporate polluters. It would make it easier for billionaires to drill, mine, and log the public lands that belong to all Americans, from the Arctic refuge to the desert landscapes of the Southwest. Next up, closing up to 1/3 of Planned Parenthood health centers. That ain't good. The final bill could result in the closure of as many as 200 Planned Parenthood health centers, or 1/3 of all of these health centers nationwide. The closures would come as a result of the bill's new ban on gender-affirming care for all Medicaid patients and provisions aimed at eliminating health plans that include abortion coverage from the Affordable Care Act marketplace. The consequence of these health centers closing would be catastrophic, said Alexis McGill Johnson, president and CEO of Planned Parenthood. If Congress passes its reconciliation bill as written, and who knows how it's written, an estimated 200 Planned Parenthood health centers could close, leaving entire communities and regions without access to essential health care. Cancers would go undetected. Birth control would be harder to get, and the public health infrastructure, already pushed to the brink, will break down. And think how much money the government could save in Trump accounts if people had birth control. It's $1,000 every time you don't get them their birth control. Instead of actually helping their constituents, politicians want to stop them from getting care at Planned Parenthood health centers and impose their beliefs on everyone else, she said. That's the end of that section. Next up, more aggressive work requirements for Medicaid recipients. We've heard a bit about this one. That's less of a secret, I would say. Tucked into the bill, more like the purpose of the bill. At the last minute, though, Republicans revised their bill to expedite the timeline for imposing work requirements on Medicaid recipients. After initially including language triggering these requirements at the start of 2029, the final bill moved up that date to the end of 2026. Okay. As a result of the GOP's stricter work requirements for federal health and food programs, an estimated 14 million people may lose their health coverage. 3 million households may go without food assistance. Still more. Not totally screwing federal workers out of retirement benefits. No, how does this work? Republicans originally used their bill to change the formula for calculating federal employees' earned benefits by basing it on a worker's 5 top years of earnings versus 3 years under current law. but by the end, they kept the formula where it was. Okay, Representative Mike Turner of Ohio, Republican, among those who had pushed back on this change, saying it wasn't fair to do this to current federal workers who've already been enduring chaos, stress, and fear of losing their jobs for months thanks to the sloppy work of Elon Musk and his surrogates at the so-called Department of Government Efficiency. Making changes to pensions and retirement benefits in the middle of someone's employment is wrong, Turner said during a committee hearing on the bill last month. Changing the rules, especially when someone has already been vested in their benefits, is wrong, he said. Employee benefits are not a gift, they're earned. So they threw him out of the Republican Party. What else? Random perk for Purple Heart recipients. That would now include Donald Trump considers himself to be a Purple Heart recipient. If you're someone who received a Purple Heart during your military service, Commander-in-Chief, he wasn't at the time that he was shot, that doesn't count, and you're looking for more tax credits after your Social Security disability benefits were cut because you got a job, this bill has you covered. The GOP bill would increase the amount of your earned income tax credit by the sum of your Social Security disability insurance benefits terminated as a result of you getting a job. So you're going to have to do math in order to get this. I mean, it's a thing, it's good, but you'll lose a serious chunk of the benefits by paying an accountant to figure out how much you're actually able to get from this. But whatever. Okay, a good summary of what's up in the bill that we might not have picked up on before, and now, I guess, on its way to the Senate for their consideration probably next week. A couple other things that slipped through the cracks I wanted to mention to you the other day, just to put on the record now. At this point, you've likely heard about it by now, but when Kristi Noem was testifying where? In the Senate? I'm going to have to open up this article, I guess, to get the details about it, but I saw the video of this. You likely saw it circulating on social media, in which she's basically being asked by, it's Maggie Hassan is asked, Hassan, how does she say that name? Is it a Hassan that she says? It's New Hampshire, so they may say Hassan, but I look at it and see, Middle Eastern origins, Hassan, but I don't know. I think I figured that out one point in the distant past, and now I can't remember anymore. But they're asking Kristi Noem at that point. The White House has dropped its threat via Stephen Miller and others, by the way. So they're losing in court all these court decisions about due process for people being rounded up and deported. And basically, they then say, well, maybe what we should do, instead of losing all these cases because they're like, oh, people have habeas corpus rights, and so that's part of the due process that they're entitled to before they're deported, and all the courts say so. What if we suspend habeas corpus? That's been done, under different circumstances and through a different process, including the consent of Congress, by the way. You might get the consent of this Congress somehow if you lock up enough Democrats. But so now they're threatening to suspend habeas corpus because, of course, the last time habeas corpus was suspended, Civil War. So we're a little bit, it's a little different. But they are claiming things like, well, we're under invasion and there's terrorists, and we declare everybody to be foreign military and terrorists at the same time, and yada yada. So something like a war, and so habeas corpus. So Senator Hassan asks, and I really should straighten that out, asks Kristi Noem outright. I mean, I think you knew what the answer was going to be. Basically, do you even know what habeas corpus is? And she gives the most amazing answer. I mean, one amazing answer would be, not really. I have a vague sense of what it means, kind of, but I'm not a lawyer, but, I got some basic idea. Well, that's not great for somebody who's the Secretary of Homeland Security, but instead she gives the AI answer. That is, I know the answer. Of course, it's something completely different, something totally wrong and alarmingly wrong. What is habeas corpus? She is asked, and she answers. Really, it is like an AI thing. Habeas corpus is a constitutional right. Doing pretty good so far. Is a constitutional right that the president has. Oh, really? The president has to be able to remove people from this country. No, that is actually incorrect. Habeas corpus. Well, Senator Hassan goes on to actually say, well, it's something else actually, and explains it. What was her quote? Habeas corpus is the legal principle that requires the government to provide a public reason for detaining and imprisoning people. If not for that protection, the government could simply arrest people, including American citizens, and hold them indefinitely for no reason. Yeah, that's pretty much it. And it's pretty much not a right that the president holds as against everyone else in the country to kick you out of the country if he doesn't like you for some reason. No, it's the opposite. You didn't even correctly identify the party to whom the right attaches. That's amazing. But I guess no surprise. But I think it was important to put that on the record that people who are supposed to hold serious power as serious people in this country really, really, really just don't know jack squat about how any effing thing in the whole government works. And it's crazy. And sadly, the thoughtful people who do know this stuff, the judges in some cases, know better, but they're sitting there stroking their chins about, well, we don't know for sure that they really don't know what habeas corpus is. And they say, well, there are various technical reasons why we can't comply. They send their lawyers who do know a little bit about habeas corpus, but they make it difficult, and they drag their feet, and there's a whole huge process to prove that they really, intentionally are depriving people of their due process. We don't know that it's intentional, and they may yet be able to cure this whole thing, and they really need to be enough already and throwing people in the slammer, which is why the bill that they passed the other day says you can't throw us in the slammer for this stuff, because we're going to get caught eventually. It's obvious now. If it wasn't obvious before, the Secretary of Homeland Security is out there saying that habeas corpus is a right that the president has to screw you. It's the opposite. Most of the Constitution is actually rights that attach for people as against the government. This is a dramatically wrong interpretation. I don't even know it's not only about getting this basic thing so wrong, but I guess getting the idea that the Constitution confers more power on the president than you think and takes away rights you had and gives them to him instead to use against you. All right, welcome back now to the Kagro Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. And I just wanted to sort of note that I think by now most of you have probably seen the Kristi Noem exchange. And it's still rather shocking, and I just kind of want to note exactly how shocking it is to me so that you can share in that. All right, let's see. A couple of other things that I should bring to your attention, including lots of talk about Supreme Court action over the last day or so, not all of which has been entirely clear to me, just because I'm thinking back to my own law school days, and I don't have any specific recollection of the discussion of the long-standing precedent that is now under threat, or perhaps, depending on how you read the situation, overtly overturned, and not done in the normal fashion, with putting a case on the docket and actually considering it. It's all emergency and shadow docket maneuvering to kind of sort of back into the reversal of 100-year-old precedent, which is not normally if that happens to conservatives, and it happens in ways that they don't like, they write huge, screechy dissents about how you can't do it this way. You got to take up the case, and it's a long-standing precedent, and that's more important than not. All right. Anyway, what's going on? I'll give you this look at it. I think this is probably a pretty good summation of what has happened here. Kate Riga for TPM. Supreme Court kills the independent agency, except for the Fed, by the way. They gave some carve-out for the Fed because I assume that's something that on the television news people have been told for years. Yeah, they're independent. You can't control those guys. Everybody else is supposed to have the same amount of independence as the Fed in those independent agencies. But for instance, independent agencies like, the U.S. Institute of Peace, for one thing. Although that's even more independent than most independent agencies, I think, as I recall. But the courts have intervened on their behalf again. And Justice told you about that in his program the other day. We ought to bring you up to speed on what happened there. But the various independent agencies that are supposed to be protected from firings directly by the president for no particular reason. But the Fed, we all hear about that all the time, that it's quasi-governmental. And I don't know, for some reason they love to emphasize that. And so does the Supreme Court. What's going on? The Supreme Court kills the independent agency. Trump is king. And they put a little crown on his head in the graphic that illustrates the piece. With the final ruling all but certainly coming down the pike, because they did this on the shadow docket, Trump has created the ultra-powerful, unbounded presidency of Project 2025's dreams. Kate Riga writes, from here on in, the Supreme Court majority all but declared yesterday, that it is ready to overturn a nearly century-old precedent meant to protect independent agencies from at-will firing by the president. It's the last brick to fall in the division between the president and the parts of the executive branch Congress created to be beyond his reach, turning the second branch of government into an all-powerful tool to be wielded by one man. Certainly the intent of the founders, right? These are strict textualists, the originalists. They definitely meant for one man to occupy the presidency and have total control over all three branches. And they designed the rest of it just because, I don't know. They separated it into three branches because that sounds like a good number of branches for one guy to control, right? Justice Elena Kagan, writing for the three dissenting liberals, dispensed with the usual niceties to upbraid her conservative colleagues for bending to President Trump's whims and doing so in a two-page ruling on the emergency docket, right? You're going to overturn a 100-year-old precedent. How many pages should that be? 2, because we're doing it in an emergency docket. The case stems from Trump's firing of members of the National Labor Relations Board and the Merit Systems Protections Board, which he did knowing that it ran afoul of a 1935 Supreme Court precedent called Humphrey's Executor. That's probably the phrase you've seen bandied about in the last couple of days. And that's the case that I said, I don't remember that one. And it's probably because it's, at this point, bedrock administrative law, and there's not a lot of litigation about it. I mean, it's a historical precedent. We certainly would have studied it, but there's 1,000 of them. And that one didn't stand out to me because that one seemed probably at the time that I went through law school among the least under threat. And the same time period, by the way, is the silencer provisions in public law that got stripped out too. So 1930s not doing well here in general. And doesn't everybody keep saying that this is like 1930s Germany? Anyway, I'm sure that has nothing to do with anything. The administration has aimed to get the case before the court, betting that there are finally enough conservative justices bought into so that they could be brought into the idea of a supreme presidency, and to let him axe the last wall protecting critical independent executive branch agencies. On Thursday, the court overruled lower courts that had reversed Trump's firings in accordance with that Supreme Court precedent, that is to say, Humphrey's Executor, hinting that the two agencies may not be protected from at-will removal. I know that was a little bit confusing. See what happened? There's the case. Here, we'll do it chronologically. There is a case. 1935 case, Humphrey's Executor, and I guess apparently basically stands for the principle that the president can't just fire for no particular reason members of these leadership of these independent agencies, like in this case, the Merit Systems Protection Board and the National Labor Relations Board. But he did it, through dodgy, they just eliminated things or said, let's fire these people because they stand in the way of things. Why the Merit Systems Protection Board? They're the ones to whom you appeal when you think you've been wrongly fired from a government job. So when Dodgy came in and fired a bunch of people wrongly from their government jobs, they went to the Merit Systems Protection Board for help, for redress. And they said, yeah, that's right. We have a merit system here. You can't just be firing people willy-nilly like this. And it's wrong, it's illegal, it's against regulations. And so they fired the people who said, yeah, that's wrong. And then they said, well, you're not allowed to fire us. We're protected. And why would there be such protection? I mean, if you think about it, right? If the rule is supposed to be, Congress wants it to be this way. Listen, the president can't just fire everybody for no reason. And if he does, you can go to the Merit Systems Protection Board and they'll reinstate you. But what if he fires both of them? Well, that would be crazy. Then what's the whole point of setting up this whole thing? Right, exactly. Oh. So people sued, or people complained to the Merit System Protection Board. The Merit System Protection Board said, that's right, you can't just fire those people. And yet they weren't being reinstated. And I don't know who initiated the case, but basically then when it makes it to the courts, they say, yeah, well, not only can you not just fire people willy-nilly from the civil service, but you also can't fire the people who remind you that you're not allowed to fire people willy-nilly from the civil service. That's the ruling of the court. Well, the Supreme Court now says, yes, you can. We overturn the decision of the court. And the lower court say, but, why are you overturning us? We got it right. We're basing it on the Supreme Court's 1935 decision in Humphrey's Executor. At which point the new Supreme Court says, the reason you're wrong is that the Supreme Court of 1935 was wrong. Right. So now it's not your fault. You were pre-wrong. For 100 years, courts have been relying on this precedent that's completely ridiculous and wrong. Don't you know? 100 years worth of lawyers have studied this decision in law school and probably forgotten about it like I did because it was so obvious in its, so obvious in the way it was crafted and so obvious in the outcome. If you can fire whoever you want, I mean, that's an approach you could take to government. It's not been ours for the past 100 and something years, but it's an approach you can take. It's just we decided to take a different one. Congress authorized it this way, and it was pretty plain on its face when they did so. But who knew for 100 years that actually all these people have been drawing salaries who shouldn't have been because the president should have been able to fire them at will. And every time a Democratic president tried to do so, Republicans said, no, you can't. You're a tyrant if you do. So that's where we are with this thing. Okay. So as we were reading it, the president made these firings at the NLRB and the Merit Systems Protection Board, knowing that it ran afoul of Humphrey's Executor. It was just betting that there were enough conservatives on the court who would say the last 100 years have been upside down and backwards. Forget about them. So the impatience to get on with things, to now hand the president the most unitary, meaning also the most subservient administration since Herbert Hoover and maybe ever, must reveal how that eventual decision will go, Kagan thundered, anticipating a future final decision after the court hears arguments on the merits. They will at least give themselves the chance to do that. In another sign of where the majority is leaning, it mentioned out of the blue that the Federal Reserve, for some reason, is uniquely protected from the president's whims due to its, quote, unique structure and, quote, distinct historical tradition. Experts have told PPM over the last few months that their only hope for survival of independent agencies amid this onslaught from the administration is the right-wing justices' concern about Trump taking over the Federal Reserve and installing loyalists there who would send the global economy into a tailspin. But the court is telegraphing that it will find a way, no matter how legally flimsy, to silo the Fed out of its coming death blow to independent agencies. I feel like this might need a little bit of explanation. I'll try and make it quick so we can move on with this article. But right, so there's an emergency docket application to the Supreme Court. And remember, we've been reading every once in a while about Steve Vladeck saying the number of cases taken up as emergencies by the Supreme Court and applied for on an emergency basis by the Trump administration is enormous, and that they've already in 4 months, outpaced the last 4 presidents or whatever it was in total, combined. in emergency applications. So there's extremely unusual activity there. But I guess on an emergency basis, they're basically saying we need you to intervene now because we need to know, look, are these people still on the Merit Protections Board or not? Are these people still on the NLRB or not? And the lower court said they are. They should be. Put them back. And the Supreme Court said, now, we'll tell you more about why we think so later, but for now, nah, those people are out. Because the president does have the right to fire people from independent agencies. And then somebody said, are you sure you want that? Because the Fed is an independent agency. And I know most conservatives don't want the Federal Reserve taken over by Trump. And they say, you know what? You're right. That would probably damage the value of all of our investments. And Clarence Thomas might think it'll make it harder for me to get more gifts from rich people because the economy might tank and they won't be able to give me money because they need to live in their underground bunkers. Whatever the motivation, that they are worried about the Fed falling prey to this. And they say, well, basically the argument is this. Look, the Fed is structured in the same way as almost all of these other independent agencies. The whole concept of independent agency is the same. And it's basically, boilerplate material. Every time Congress creates one of these things, they just borrow the language from previously existing statutes. So there's very little chance that they're going to be structured differently. So what the conservatives did here is they said, you know what, though? It is different. It's got a unique structure, but it doesn't. It has more or less the same structure as these other ones that they want to allow the president to fire people from. So what they're saying is, I don't know what the structure is and why it's different. It just is. It is different. So yeah. You're trying to scare me about the Fed falling this way. So we just say it won't. It won't. How do we know? Well, because we're the robes. We'll just say it doesn't. What if Trump later wants it to fall and the conservative justices initially say no? Well, then, nice house you got there. It'd be a shame something or if something were to happen to it. And then we'll see what the robes think then. That's what's going on here. So, where were we here? Right. Anyway, right. The way they put it, the onslaught from the administration, they're thinking that the right-wing justices concerned about Trump taking over the Federal Reserve is what motivated them to say, well, we'll just carve that one out. That's all. We can kill all the rest of the independent agencies, but the Fed will be protected, maybe, unless he comes for us. But then today's order poses a puzzle. For the Federal Reserve's independence rests on the same constitutional and analytic foundations as that of the NLRB, MSPB, FTC, FCC, and so on, which is to say it rests largely on Humphreys, Kagan wrote, citing the court's precedent protecting these members from at-will removal. So the majority has to offer a different story. One way of making new law on the emergency docket, and remember, they're not supposed to make law, they're just calling balls and strikes, interpreting law, but one way of making new law on the emergency docket, no less, the deprecation of Humphreys, turns out to require yet another, the creation of a bespoke Federal Reserve exception, she added. If the idea is to reassure the markets, a simpler and more judicial approach would have been to deny the president's application for a stay on the continued authority of Humphreys. And they could have simply done that, right? We're going to let you argue the merits. All you had to do to reassure the markets that the Fed was safe at this point would be to say, for now, we're not going to intervene on an emergency basis and say it's okay for you to fire those members of NLRB and the Merit Systems Protection Board. We're going to reinstate them pending our hearing and decision on the full case and leave it at that. That would have had the same effect, but it would have made Trump mad. That's the big difference. That's why they didn't do it. The majority further tipped its hand, she pointed out, by rationalizing granting Trump's stay request by saying that it would stop the members of the two embattled agencies from being fired and rehired as the litigation proceeds. But Kagan notes that the two lower courts, as they must, while Humphrey's executor still stands, reinstated the fired members. To allow the firings to stand, she wrote, is allowing the president to overrule Humphreys by fiat, right? We're overruling the lower courts. Why? They made a mistake. Why? What was the mistake? They applied Humphrey's as written. They didn't know we were going to overrule it, though. That's their mistake. They should have guessed that we were going to overrule it. And if they had guessed that we were going to overrule it and ruled that the president had the right to fire them, we probably would have said, no, you're not in compliance with precedent. That's wrong. Or I guess they could have let it stand, or it never would have come up on an emergency basis. Certainly the administration would have said, oh, good, we got what we wanted under the lower courts. But again, what they're saying here is we had to intervene on an emergency basis to stop the lower courts from making a mistake, the mistake of correctly interpreting current precedent, because we're going to overturn it later. That's not the way you do it. She also thwacked her colleagues for their explanation of the balance of injuries, noting that the side of the agencies does not boil down to the fired members' interest in keeping their, quote, nifty jobs, but the interest of Congress to create agencies that the president cannot destroy. So what's the test of whether or not they can allow these firings to go forward or to stay the decision of the lower court to try to stop them? The balancing test, balancing the injuries. Okay, what do you balance? Well, not, as Kagan notes, what they did, balancing the interest of people in their jobs, but the interest of Congress in exercising its power to create independent agencies. They just chose the wrong injuries to balance. This case will bring the right-wing legal world closer than it ever could have imagined to a unitary executive, a previously unconceivably muscular, that's what it says, muscular presidency where the occupant of the Oval Office can reshape the entire executive branch in his image, his wrinkly orange image. Coupled with the Trump administration's annihilation of the civil service, the executive branch will become something much closer to a fiefdom, an extension of presidential power with few institutional guardrails. Not that. This was the guiding light of Project 2025, a plan realized in the aftermath of the first administration when civil servants and non-toadies in the executive branch proved frustrating obstacles to Trump's vision. But I do remind you that unitary executive theory was a huge priority in the George W. Bush administration and was pushed hugely by Dick Cheney and something leopards ate his face. Today's order, Kagan wrote, favors the president over our precedent, and it does so unrestrained by the rules of briefing and argument and the passage of time needed to discipline our decision-making. I would deny the president's application, she added. Oh, really? No kidding. I would do so based on the will of Congress. Those guys, important branch and everything. This court's seminal decision approving independent agencies for cause protections in Humphrey's Executors 100 years ago and the ensuing 90 years of this nation's history. There you have it. So it's pretty significant. So, if you've been seeing the Humphrey's Executor thing bandied about and wondering what it was, what it really meant, besides, beyond who won, did Trump win or did we win? Now you know. Okay. Sorry. Now you know. Maybe you didn't want to know. All right. What else have we got that we can shoehorn in there? Oh, you know what? This was of interest. Can I play this? I just thought this was an interesting bit here. A audio or a video capture from Aaron Rupar, who specializes in this stuff. Oh, did I pocket it? Yeah. Okay. So let me bring it over to the big computer. Just, I guess a good illustration of, Jake Tapper and his partner, whose name I can't remember, on the book, wasting their time on the wrong person in terms of their cognitive decline, as you know. All right. So this is Trump speaking. I don't know where. He's sitting behind a podium. It's on the Right Side Broadcasting Network, is the ones who put it out, the wackadoodles on the, one of the extremist television stations. But it's a capture of Trump. And by the way, people have been mentioning in the last couple of days that the White House website and, the whole press operation has pulled an interesting trick here. They stopped putting out written transcripts of presidential remarks, mostly because it makes him look like an idiot, I guess. But they claim transparency on the fact that, well, they just put it out in video form instead, which, I mean, there it is. You could watch it for yourself or listen for yourself, assuming, you also don't have a disability in the way, whatever. But a lot of people can do it themselves. And I guess they figure, yeah, well, they got that. What do they need a transcript for? But the transcript helps in, being able to quote it, right? It just makes the process quicker if you're writing articles about it. But I guess that's the reason I don't want to make it quick and easy to quote the president accurately and directly. It'll make them look like a moron. Let them at least have to do the work of transcribing it themselves. So what sorts of things are they avoiding having to put up in transcript form? Things like this next 45 seconds. You tell me what's going on. What's the subject of discussion, and what are you supposed to take away from these comments?
They will fight the drug companies. The drug companies are very worried that they're going to fight, and that's okay. If they fight, we'll just say, that's okay. We are not going to let you sell any more cars into the United States. Or
you see the problem right away. I mean, I don't know what the context is. Maybe there's a broader context. Sometimes there is, and you can figure this out. But again, something. The drug companies are very worried that they're not going to fight. Who? What? Okay, drug companies are worried they're gonna fight. Sorry. And that's okay. If they fight, the drug companies, we'll just say we're not going to let you sell any more cars into the U.S. because of the number of cars that drug companies are selling into the U.S. What? I mean, he's skipping subjects and everything, but I mean, is this idiocy or is this the weave, right? Drug cars, blah, blah, and it goes elsewhere too. So we'll back it up a little bit and start it again.
Not going to let you sell any more cars into the United States, or we're not going to let you sell any more wine or liquor or alcohol or something that's actually much more important to them than the drugs. And we're going to be able to force that issue if we need to. They should do it. We're basically equalizing. They should do it. And, the drug companies should do just as well. This shouldn't be a hit on their stock. I don't think it will be. It's basically, it's going to be the same amount of money, but it's going to be redistributed. And it's going to be redistributed, so they're going to pay a little bit more, and we're going to pay a lot less. A little bit more because there's so many more. It's a bigger number. And
there you go. How do you feel about the cognitive decline of Joe Biden, ladies and gentlemen? Oh no. Oh, but he's not the president anymore. All right. Well, you tell me what he's talking about. I couldn't tell you what that is supposed to mean. Fight the drug companies, and if they fight, we won't let them sell cars or wine or liquor or alcohol. Well, I guess that'll be easy to do. I really don't know what that's supposed to mean. And that's the end of the reporting on it because I don't know. I don't know what he was trying to say. I don't want to try to say and wash it. It might reassure people if we found out something about more context of what he was speaking about. I might search for it. I might never. I don't know. It doesn't. You should be able to be taken out of context and at least be able to say, this hangs together in some way. I'm misinterpreting it in a broader context, but even this 48 seconds doesn't make any sense internally. But I guess that should be no surprise. All right, let's see. Other things to discuss. Oh, I did put aside Don Moynihan talking about the Humphrey's Executor thing, but I do think we actually got a pretty good explanation of it out of the Talking Points memo discussion. I won't add that for your further consideration over the weekend, but I did mention that there was a new set of defiances of court orders with respect to immigration going on, and it had to do with deportations to Africa. I'll just cite and read you a little bit from the New York Times on that one before our next break. Judge finds U.S. violated court order, oh no, with sudden deportation flight to Africa. Lawyers for some of the 8 migrants deported on Tuesday said that they were told they were being sent to South Sudan. People familiar with the flight said it landed for the time being in Djibouti, which is not South Sudan, but is nearby. Why and what's going on, and why is it important? We'll take a quick look at the work of Alan Fuhr, Tyler Pager, Hamed Aliaziz, and Matthias Schwartz together for the New York Times on Wednesday, the 21st. A federal judge in Boston said on Wednesday that the Trump administration had violated an order that he issued last month, barring officials from deporting people to countries not their own without first giving them sufficient time to object. Oh no, a court order directly disobeyed. What is the penalty for that? Contempt of court. That is why the new One Big Beautiful Bill says, and we'll see whether it stands, no, you can't hold us in contempt of court anymore. Oh, okay. So there's no recourse whatsoever if you break court orders. No, there isn't. All right. Well, we got to fix this one in post. We're a little bit late with the music. I don't know. I should not say so, but at any rate, it's on my mind. Okay. What else is going on? We'll return to this and give you a little bit more of the flavor of what's happening after this ill-timed break. The finding by the judge, Brian E. Murphy, was one of the strongest judicial rebukes the administration has faced so far. Hi, everybody. It's me, David Waldman. Yes, the same guy who interrupts you all the time. Interrupting you one more time just to tell you again, another reminder that your contributions are what keep this show on the air, and Patreon.com, Patreon.com, is still among the easiest ways to make the sustaining subscription donations that keep us afloat. Are you ready for the pep talk about how our Patreon campaign is still going strong and growing? Well, too bad. Yeah, the plain fact is we actually are headed in the wrong direction, and whereas we once had about 175 monthly patrons, we're now actually down below 150. Time to recruit some more. Not exactly the kind of news I wanted to share, but there it is. For those of you in a position to support the show, Patreon.com does make it easy to make those secure, recurring monthly contributions to do so. Patreon.com/KagroX gets you straight to our donation page. We've been through a lot together. The worst of the pandemic, we hope. The worst of the insurrection, we hope. So go ahead and treat yourself. You don't need an excuse. Give yourself the gift of a little something you enjoy in life. Support the show. And of course, if you happen to prefer using PayPal or even the Square Cash app, we're up and running on those options too. So thanks again, everyone, for all your support. We couldn't, or at least shouldn't, do it without you. Hope you'll be on board soon too. Thanks for all your support. All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. I have fouled my efforts to retime things, but whatever. We'll have some odd gaps. What can I tell you about that? We had some in the live show. Anyway, I was reading to you the beginning of this New York Times piece on the attempts to render people to South Sudan, even though that's not where they were from, and what it represents in terms of what's going on in the clash between the Trump administration and the courts. Can you hold, is contempt of court the last tool that the courts have to produce any hope that anyone will follow their orders? And is that in jeopardy? Will that be taken away from them? Will it be ignored up until it's officially removed? I don't know. We'll see. But this helps outline one of several places where that could be tested. And maybe we can discuss a little bit more about the other ones out there pending. So Judge Brian Murphy in Boston rebuking the administration here, and apparently in the strongest fashion so far among the federal judiciary. It was not immediately clear what punishment, if any, Judge Murphy intended to mete out against the administration or those who took part in the operation, but he asked for a list of names of everyone involved so that he could notify them that they might face criminal contempt penalties. That'll just make it more important for the Trump administration to rush the One Big Beautiful Bill through Congress so that they can say, Judge Murphy, you have no such power. You used to when you started this case, but now you don't. Anyway, the judge's decision came at a hearing in federal district court in Boston to consider an emergency motion, another emergency, filed by lawyers for a group of men who said they were deported after being told they were being sent to South Sudan, a violence-plagued country in Africa, in case you hadn't figured that out. It's in Africa. As the hearing began, officials from the Homeland Security Department, where they don't know what habeas corpus is, officials from Homeland Security in Washington disclosed that 8 immigrants had been deported Tuesday on a flight to a third country, but they refused to say where the men were going. That sounds like a good way to head into court, don't you think? While much of the discussion at the court hearing took place under seal, Judge Murphy said that the government had given the deported men little more than 24 hours notice that they were being removed from the United States at all, a time frame that he described as plainly insufficient. And in fact, I thought the Supreme Court had recently said it's got to be more than that. The department's actions in this case, he went on, are unquestionably violative of this court's order. Judge Murphy, who was appointed by former President Joseph R. Biden Jr., maybe you've heard of him, he was old, said the administration's violation could ultimately result in a finding of criminal contempt. He also said he was searching for a way to provide the men some version of the due process they had been denied. In an order after the hearing, the judge said these men should have legal representation and be granted an interview, which would allow them to tell U.S. officials if they feared being sent to a different country. According to 2 people familiar with the matter who spoke on the condition of anonymity because they were not authorized to comment publicly, the flight carrying the deportees had landed for now in the East African nation of Djibouti, which I'm hoping I'm pronouncing close to correctly. One of those things that seems designed to confound us. Djibouti. You've seen it. It's not, a brand new creation or anything. And it's right there in the neighborhood, but again, it's a different country. Regardless of what you think about the concept of deporting people from the country, my guess is the preference should be for sending them back where they came from, if you've got to send them anywhere, and that's where the political asylum issue comes up. Is it safe to send you to your country of origin? And if not, what should we be doing with you? U.S. military personnel in Djibouti were standing by to assist with securing detainees if needed, one U.S. official said. Flight tracking data shows a private jet owned by a company that had previously provided deportation flights left an airport in Harlingen, Texas on Tuesday around noon local time. The aircraft, a Gulfstream 5, which should be, if it's good enough for them, it should be good enough for the Department of Homeland Security to use for their secretary, crossed the Atlantic Ocean, stopped at an airport in Shannon, Ireland, and continued on to Djibouti, where it landed on Wednesday. Flight tracking data shows that it was the only U.S. registered civilian aircraft to land in Djibouti on Wednesday. So it should be no question as to, is this the one or not? When pressed Wednesday about where the plane was headed, Tricia McLaughlin, spokeswoman for DHS, would say only that South Sudan was not the final destination for the flight. But what if it was the final destination for the people who left on that flight? No, I didn't say that. Documents provided by DHS showed that the 8 men were citizens of, you might wonder, okay, well, let's see, land in Djibouti. We're going to send you to South Sudan. Oh, I can't go there. I'm afraid to go there. Whatever. Are these people from South Sudan and worried about their safety if they're returned there? No, they're not. Where are they from? Nearby places like Cuba or Laos or Mexico. How can we get you back to your country of origin if you're from Mexico? That's impossible. There is one on the flight from South Sudan, Burma, and Vietnam. And, they might not be fantastic people. They are, of course, as it says here anyway, convicted of crimes including murder, sexual assault, and robbery. But that's only 1, 2, 3 crimes, and there are people from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 countries, and there's 8 of them. And I don't know. I'm sure it's entirely possible that, among the 8 of them, they've only committed 3 crimes. They weren't that ambitious, but they were bad crimes. Maybe it's just the administration saying one guy did a murder and sexual assault, and the other guy did a robbery, and then 6 of them are innocent. I don't know how that's distributed across them, and they won't tell us where they're going either. So what are we supposed to do with any of this stuff? We conducted a deportation flight from Texas to remove some of the most barbaric, violent individuals illegally in the United States. Yeah. Ms. McLaughlin told reporters, adding that the offenses the men had committed were uniquely monstrous and barbaric, which says to me they probably weren't uniquely monstrous and barbaric, but they might have been bad. They might even have committed them. I don't know. They don't give us the information to make those decisions. And there's no dealing with these guys. But that's not even the focus of what's going on here. Hours after the hearing ended, Judge Murphy issued an order laying out how he intended to provide due process to the men on the deportation flight. He said that each of them should be provided access to a lawyer. Yeah, we do that in this country. And given an interview in which they could inform the government if they had a reason to fear being sent to a country like South Sudan. You might think that somebody who is from South Sudan would have a specific story about that. And I don't know. I mean, maybe not so much with everybody else, but then you might, I don't know. I guess I would want to know from the Cuban person. Any reason to object to being sent to South Sudan? Yeah, I'm not from South Sudan. But anything beyond that, I don't know. But again, just a hearing. Tell me what's up. And we might say, that doesn't bother me so much. You don't want to go to South Sudan? Although, why are we sending? I don't know. I guess it's difficult to return people to Cuba. Why is it difficult to return people to Mexico? Why is it difficult to send them to Laos, Cambodia, wherever they might actually be from? I assume that that's the case. The government can make that case. All I'm saying is I want to hear from the defendant. Maybe we throw out everything the defendant says, but don't they get a chance to say anything? Not yet. If the government doesn't believe their claims, Judge Murphy said, the men would have 15 days to challenge that determination. The United States would then have to arrange housing for them as they awaited final decision. 15 days worth. We can handle that. During the hearing, Trina Realmuto, the lawyer for the detainees, called this proposed remedy a legal and logistical nightmare. And asked the courts to give lawyers face-to-face access to the detainees, not just phone calls. It's an ask. Shortly after the hearing, she said such a measure was necessary to ensure the well-being of the detainees who had been in limbo for more than a full day. We're concerned with every hour that passes that they are remaining on this plane, Ms. Realmuto said. She added that little was known about the men's condition and that she could not disclose the plane's location, which was discussed before Judge Murphy in a closed portion of the hearing. Ms. Realmuto and her colleagues had rushed to court on Tuesday to ask Judge Murphy to intervene in the possible deportations to South Sudan. During the initial Tuesday hearing, Judge Murphy said he was concerned that his order had been violated. Yeah, well, it was. The order, which was handed down in April, directed officials to allow any immigrants who wanted to contest their removal to a country not their own at least 15 days to challenge the deportation. And what did happen? Nothing. They just got packed on a plane and sent out. Oh, that is bad. Those challenges needed to be based on credible fears that the immigrants would face danger if they were sent to a third country. Flight tracking data shows that the plane traveled from Texas to Djibouti is owned by Journey Aviation. Don't stop believing. A charter aircraft company that has worked for the U.S. government. In an email, the chief executive of Journey Aviation declined to comment. The same private jet was used by the government during a prisoner swap with Russia, flying the basketball star Brittany Griner back from the United States. You remember that? Not immediately clear how South Sudan would handle the arrival of deportees from the U.S. A government spokesman did not immediately respond to a request for comment. I guess our government or South Sudan? I mean, are we basically like, I don't know, the South Sudanese do not have the organization to stop us from landing, and if we just throw people off the plane at the end and leave, they're not going to do anything? Is that it? Or is that why they chose South Sudan? It's really not clear. But, no chance of finding out either because they don't want to answer, and you can't hold them in contempt either, or at least that's what the design is. All right, there's a lot more to this one, but I just wanted to put the basics on record that, if you're waiting, I know the wheels of justice turn slowly in this country, and we're all sad about that, but we'll get to the bottom of this eventually, and once they find out that they're just violating court orders, why, we'll do something. Well, while you're preparing to do something, they're preparing to make it illegal for you to do that thing if people violate court orders and the courts finally decide, yes, this is contempt. Eventually, too late. Sorry, not interested in helping you with this one anymore. All right, let's see. Maybe we want to add this one. Does this come at it from a slightly different angle? Possibly. ABC News from a couple of days ago, but I'm trying to figure out whether this is, this is, I guess, was the first warning on May 18th, as Nicholas Riccardi of ABC News points out the provision in the One Big Beautiful Bill that would remove the ability of courts to punish contemners this way. And is there more to it, or is it all just about that one? Anyway, the title of the piece is Trump's Clash with the Courts Raises Prospect of Showdown Over Separation of Powers. And the subheader explains the Trump administration has been pushing back against certain court rulings it doesn't like in hundreds of cases filed against it in the last few months. And then it tucked deep in the 1,000-page plus multi-trillion-dollar budget bill making its way through the reconciliation bill is a paragraph curtailing a court's greatest tool for forcing the government to obey its rulings, the power to enforce contempt findings. But so far, they really haven't enforced any anyway, so they may be panicking for no reason, but the courts are running out of options. But before they get down to the decision or the point where they say there's really no other option but to hold people in contempt and start putting presumably lower level government employees in jail until they comply, they're going to try and put a stop to that, in the budget somehow. Sure. Okay. Well, all right. Maybe we don't need to spend any time reading any further into the ABC piece on that one. And we can move on to a couple of other items. This I thought was of some interest the other day. We started this piece, it was Paul Waldman's piece in Public Notice, Aaron Rupar's Operation Donald Trump and the Power of the Big Fake Number. I wanted to return to this one because we've been saying ding, ding, ding after every time we mention the word deals. Don't believe the hype about his deals, the ding, ding, ding deals. We just started on it last time we read it. Maybe we'll have a few more minutes to deal with it here. If there's one thing Donald Trump loves more than a deal, ding, 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 it's the announcement of a deal, or a launch party for a deal, as I always say. The part where he comes before the cameras in triumph to tell the world that through his superhuman negotiating skills, remember this, he has secured an agreement that will bring a future of unfathomable riches to all Americans. These announcements invariably center on a dollar figure, usually one almost preposterously large, 500 billion, 2 trillion, 10 trillion. We're all supposed to marvel at the majesty of this number to the point where our critical faculties fail us and we accept it without skepticism. There may never have been a better case study of this than Trump's recent trip to the Middle East. During the tour, Trump repeatedly touted the enormous deals that he supposedly obtained from Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and the UAE. But an examination of those and some other recent deals he's announced, all portrayed as new investments pouring into the American economy, like tariffs, shows them to be largely a mirage. Where the marks and the suspiciously large dollar numbers is the centerpiece of the con. So many deals, you'll be tired of all the deals, is the first section. Trump returned from the trip claiming to have obtained over $2 trillion in great deals, ding ding, which would indeed be remarkable. Since our entire GDP last year was around 30 trillion, that alone would mean an increase of almost 7% in the size of our economy. The last time we had that much growth in a single year, 1984. As this newsletter was being prepared for publication yesterday, he notes parenthetically, Trump claimed even more preposterously that on his trip he secured a nice contribution of about $5 trillion. So $2 trillion, almost assuredly an overstatement and a lie, but now it's 5. Isn't that cool? We only had to wait a day or two. Alas, the $2 trillion figure was essentially fictional, not unlike the $2 trillion claim made for savings. We're going to save $2 trillion with dodgy, No, $1 trillion. 100 million. Less than that. Anyway, first, the Washington Post noted many of the deals that the Trump administration had been claiming credit for from this trip were actually inked under the Biden administration, and some are absurdly exaggerated to boot. In one case, the administration claimed an agreement for Amazon to provide $1 billion worth of cloud services to the UAE. Well, that's a lot, right? Sure, but it sounds doable. Well, it is, because the deal was for $1 billion, but by the time Trump announced it, it's $181 billion. So just add $180 billion to the whole thing. That's like way off the mark, right? Okay. And according to one source who spoke to the Post, the Saudi-ish government contacted all the top businessmen in the country and asked how much business they have in the United States so that it could add up the numbers and present them to Trump for him to announce as though they represented new investments. What? Yeah. So how much business are you doing already in the U.S.? This much. All right. From now on, Trump secured that as a deal. What? No, he didn't. We were already doing it. Too bad. As for the investments from the Gulf governments, these sovereign wealth investment funds have already have a substantial investment portfolio in the United States. Adam Hirsch, senior economist at the Economic Policy Institute, told Public Notice. So, a lot of what's being announced is probably stuff that they are already doing or were going to do anyway. Many of the figures were provided with few details, and even if they do materialize, it would have to be over the course of years or even decades. Consider the money supposedly pouring in from Qatar. Somewhat confusingly, the administration says Trump, quote, signed an agreement with Qatar to generate an economic exchange worth at least $1.2 trillion. President Trump also announced economic deals totaling more than $243.5 billion between the United States and Qatar. Even that statement alone, right? What does that mean? Well, we're generating an economic exchange, okay, worth $1.2 trillion. Nice. Oh, you're not impressed by that? Well, there's more. There's another $243.5 billion. Yeah, how's that coming? Well, that's from economic deals. What? I mean, you see what this is? We've signed an agreement to generate an economic exchange worth $1.2 trillion, and there are some economic deals separate from that somehow worth another $243.5 billion. That sounds like $1.2 trillion plus $243.5 billion, whatever that is. Why isn't it that number? And why are some of them economic exchanges and the others economic deals? And it's because neither of them are anything. So, what are you talking about? I don't know. It's an F on your paper. So, is it 1.2 trillion or 243.5 billion or both? It's impossible to tell. There is one more specific component, but it might best be called aspirational. Qatar Airways says it will be buying up to 210 aircraft from Boeing, which sounds terrific, but Boeing produced only 348 jetliners in total for all of its global customers in 2024. And so, right, that's your total output from last year, 348. Well, we're buying 210 more. Wow, that's like seems enormous. It seems out of keeping with the size of Qatar Airlines, wouldn't you think? Right? Qatar Airways' entire current fleet consists of 233 planes. We're doubling the size of Qatar Airlines? No, we're buying up to 210 over the next 10,000 years, right? Who knows? If the carrier is going to nearly double the size of its fleet, it would take an awfully long time, likely decades. It's certainly not a bad thing for the American economy if this huge order comes to pass, but that's a big if. And no if about it when you're saying, we made $1 bazillion worth of deals. Turning to the UAE, we see that in reaching its fantastical dollar totals there, the administration is counting an announcement it made in March that the UAE would invest $1.4 trillion, quote, in the United States. But it's not clear how the administration calculated that figure, and what numbers they do provide are fuzzy at best. The largest specific amount, $100 billion, which is a lot to be sure, but is only less than 10% of the number they gave, is attributed to the AI Infrastructure Partnership, a collaboration of a group of investment firms and technology companies, including BlackRock and Microsoft, each of which got a seat on the plane, right, to finance artificial intelligence projects. MGX, an investment company owned by the government of Abu Dhabi, is one of the investors. But $100 billion is the total that project is hoping to, quote, mobilize and spend around the world, not just in the U.S. Furthermore, how much MGX plans to contribute is not detailed, and it is likely just a fraction. Nevertheless, the administration calls the entire $100 billion a UAE investment in the United States, which is clearly misleading, if not outright false. The rest of the investments the administration cites, $25 billion here, $1.2 billion there, don't add up to anything near the flashier $1.4 trillion total. There is one MGX investment we know more about, but it's more like a payoff to the Trump family than an investment. MGX is purchasing $2 billion worth of stable coins issued by World Liberty Financial, the crypto firm created by the Trump family and its sketchy partners. The arrangement will net the Trumps something in the order of $80 million a year in actual money, not crypto, according to Forbes, right? You pay the fees for this stuff in real money, not that crap we're selling to you. This raises another issue. Trump might argue that lying about the details doesn't matter as long as he's bringing business to the United States. But as Hirsch told me, and I don't know who Hirsch is because they weren't introduced earlier in the story, I don't think, but there's a difference between promoting the United States as a favorable investment environment and cutting these deals where the president is benefiting personally from the deal, whether it's financially or to tailor this to his political benefit. And with Trump, we know what takes precedence. Was Hirsch the name perhaps of the person from the Economic Policy Institute? Adam Hirsch. There we go. Senior economist. All right. I know. Yeah, well, Paul Waldman. I was just going to call him Waldman, but Paul, pretty careful reporter, probably edited this piece correctly, and almost assuredly I'd just forgotten who Hirsch was, and that was the case. Well, anyway, cutting towards the conclusion here. We've seen this movie before. Trump has put on versions of this show many times, and the same pattern always recurs. He makes a splashy announcement, which receives credulous coverage. Then most reporters move on and don't follow up to see whether the dramatic dollar figure he announced actually panned out. The structure of news helps explain why. An announcement is a discrete event that occurs on a particular day and is straightforward to cover. He did say these things, right? While unfulfilled promises occur over time and require enterprising journalism to report on, Trump understands this perfectly well, and he also knows how seductive a big number can be. This is the man who says his buildings have more floors than they actually have, and claimed his 11,000 square foot apartment was 30,000 square feet. Case in point, one day after taking office, Trump held a dramatic White House press conference to announce the creation of Stargate. We forget about that already? A large data center project to power AI. In attendance were Larry Ellison from Oracle, Sam Altman from OpenAI, and Masayoshi Son of SoftBank, the Japanese investment firm. Put that name down in your books because I think you're going to hear a lot about it in the future, Trump said. A new American company that will invest at least $500 billion, at least, in AI infrastructure in the United States, and very, very quickly, moving very rapidly, creating over 100,000 American jobs almost immediately. Everybody's working already, right? The $500 billion figure, highly questionable. The idea of immediately creating 100,000 jobs, that's just bonkers. Yet in the coverage of the Stargate announcement, the $500 billion figure was in all the headlines. Trump announces a $500 billion AI infrastructure investment in the U.S. That's CNN. Trump highlights partnership investing $500 billion in AI, says the AP. Trump tech agenda begins with $500 billion private AI plan and cuts to regulation. Washington Post. But the figure is imaginary. OpenAI and SoftBank have pledged to spend $19 billion each on Stargate, which neither company appears to have lying around at the moment, so even that will still have to mostly be raised or borrowed. As for the rest of the $500 billion, it's almost purely hypothetical. The project might end up costing that much from now until some point in the future, but who knows? The same is true of Trump's fantastical 100,000 jobs created, quote unquote, almost immediately. There's only one Stargate location under construction. It's in Texas. Data centers create a fair number of jobs during the building phase. In April, there were around 2,000 workers erecting the project. But once the center is operational, that number drops precipitously, as you might imagine. The Stargate facility will reportedly employ about 100 people long-term. 100,000 jobs. 100. But both Trump and Stargate participants had an interest in exaggerating the project beyond all reason. He got to claim that he's bringing limitless prosperity to America, and they fed the AI hype that boosts their businesses. And companies know that a good way to gain Trump's favor, or perhaps more importantly, avoid his wrath, is to give him credit for what they were planning to do anyway, even before he got elected. Apple has played this game with particular skill up until today, I guess. In November of 2019, Trump visited an Apple computer plant in Texas and then tweeted, he visited a plant. Today, I opened a major Apple manufacturing plant in Texas that will bring high-paying jobs back to America. But that plant had already been in operation for 6 years, since early in Barack Obama's second term. And then, in February, the company announced that it would spend $500 billion, amazing that figure again, in the United States over the next 4 years. Much of the coverage portrayed the announcement as a significant shift in response to Trump's tariffs. Yet, when the Wall Street Journal examined the company's publicly released balance sheets, it concluded Apple's announced figure is in line with what one might expect in the company to be spending anyway, given its financials. Well, I still didn't reach the end of this piece, but you get the idea.
NetworksRadio.com. You have been listening to Kagro in the Morning with David Waldman.
One more line from this, just the next section title, The Number is the Tell. We should be looking out for that. Anytime one of those numbers, and if it's always $500 billion, or if it's coming in 2 weeks, you'll know that it's all BS. All right, time for me to hand things over to Justice Putnam next for the West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and get the hell out of here for a long weekend. Enjoy. We'll see you Tuesday.